In this tutorial we discuss visual weight, which contains 8 different basic design principles. When we comment on layouts and give suggestions for improvement in the gallery, these are 8 of the main suggestions that we want to look for to improve our layouts. Visual weight is basically where your eye goes first when you look at a layout. In general, you want your eye to go to the photos first. There are other instances where you may want your eye to go to something else first, but in general, most of the time we want our photos to pop, or that means for our eye to go to them first. Let me zoom in a little bit here. You'll see here are the 8 design principles that will affect visual weight, and they can be used together or only one on a layout, but often they'll be used together, and when you change one it affects the other. We have contrast, size, color, shape, texture, isolation, value, and balance. And so I have a few samples here in this tutorial of some of these, and we'll go through and discuss each one of these a little bit more. The biggest mistake I see on layouts and design principle is contrast. Using a contrasting color, tint, shade, or tone in the background mat or border will make a big difference in your layouts. If you don't have enough contrast between your text and what's behind the text, your text will not be readable. And I see this a lot for newbies. You have to pay attention to always putting something light onto something dark. And in fact, to make your photos pop, you can also have something you can also have photos that are both dark and both light. And to pay attention to your particular photos that you're using and whether they're dark or light, and then to purposefully put a contrasting color on a map behind them will make those photos just pop right off the page. That's why you'll see me often suggesting to just add a white border around a photo. And that will just be just enough to make that photo pop off the page. Here's some samples. I'm reading my little notes here. In the first one, I hope you can see these well. Let me zoom in just a little bit. In the first one, you can see the photos and the background colors are all equal. There is no contrast at all, so nothing really pops. They all just kind of blend in together. But now I've taken in the second one these same photos put against a black background, and you can see there's definite contrast there, and those photos just pop right off the page. Also, on the last one, I've put this exact same photos on a white background, and you can see that they also pop this way. That's because these particular photos aren't really neither dark nor light. They're very neutral, and so to go to the very dark black or very white will create contrast. You'll notice some other contrast problems down here in the text area. You'll notice on this one you can read the title Spring Flowers just fine, but then over here with it against the black you cannot read it as well, and over here once again you can read it fine. Of course you see here the date totally disappears black on black here in the middle. So and also the text around the edges here. So I would need to take this text here, the names of the flowers on the middle one, and maybe make it white, but I would want to be careful that that it didn't grab too much attention making it white. Maybe pink might be better. Let me zoom back out so I can see my words. Sometimes you're going to have both dark and light photos on a page, and that's going to be a little bit more difficult to fix, and so I'm going to give you some examples now. Rather than neutral flower as in these neutral color as in these flowers up here, I'm going to give you some examples of some dark and some light photos. And down here you're going to notice I put two photos on the same page. This photo here is considered a light photo, and this photo here is considered a dark photo. And now you can see, because the background is a dark brown, this photo, the light photo, pops just fine, but the dark photo on the dark background has no contrast and it does not pop. And so if you look at this photo here, this is what I did to solve the problem. I put a dark matte, just as the brown was a dark paper, only I chose a dark burgundy, behind the light photo. So I have a dark matte and a light photo, and this photo still pops. To take care of this dark photo, I put a light matte behind it. And then I also put another matte which matches the matte here on the light photo. So it has double mattes on it, so it would contrast with the background. Because this white, if I would have just left it with this white matte, it wouldn't have looked good on the matching white background. And so I've actually used a double contrast here to get this dark photo to pop. But you can definitely see, if you look over here and then you look over here, the difference. Now I've got another design principle going on in these layouts, and I'm not sure if you can spot it, but on this layout I have my title really large. And you'll remember one of the design principles that grabs visual weight is size. And so on this layout, my eye goes to that huge title, and my photos are small. If you look on this layout, I fixed that. I made the title a little bit smaller, and I made the photos larger, because the larger photos are going to make my eye go to the photos first, rather than the text. And so not only do I have color principle working on these two pages, I also have the size principle working on this page. Let me see what's next. I have to zoom out. Okay, sometimes photos are both light and dark in the same photo. In this instance, let me zoom back in. In this instance, I have a photo of my sons when they were little, sitting on the floor, but their shirts are white, which is light, and the background of the photo is black, which is dark. And in this case, I can go in either direction. If I put white behind it, the photo still pops because it contrasts with the black background. But if I put black behind it, it blends in with the black background, and their white shirts pop. So the black is contrasting now with their white shirts. So don't just look at the overall photo when trying to decide whether or not it's a light or a dark photo. Consider that what they're wearing might help that photo pop, especially if you coordinate the background with the background of the photo. Let me zoom back out. Once again, size makes a huge difference in visual weight. You can see here I have my dog Abby, and I have 3 photos, and I made them all the same size. And nothing is really popping here. And generally, if you have 3 photos, you can pick one of the photos as the focal point, as I did here on the right, and make it larger, and then have the other 2 photos be supporting photos to it. And now my eye will go straight to this larger photo, and then it's going to travel up the page to see the other 2. And so you can see how changing the size of photos really makes a huge difference. My sample for this one isn't great, but color is also a factor that will make photos pop. And in this case, I have everything black and white except for the bone. But you can't see it because the bone doesn't really carry a whole lot of color to it. I could have made it more yellow. But this is a fun technique. It's called color isolation, and I do have a written tutorial on it. I will have a video tutorial soon. It's in the Playing is Fun course. And let me read here on my text what I've written. Sometimes you might have like a flower and in a photo, especially like maybe wedding photos or something, and you can use the color isolation technique as I've done here. Turn it all black and white and then just make that flower the color, something that will just draw your eye right to that photo. Is another technique maybe to note the color of clothing and to use a complementary or monochromatic or analogous color to the color of the clothes. And so this is one reason why I like to put my photos on the page first, because I will first look to see whether they're light or dark to decide what kind of papers to put behind them. Or I will note the colors in the photo, and I will put something contrasting or complementary for papers to those photos. Another technique would be to make the entire photo gray except for the focal point photo, which is left in color. Okay, let me see. A third technique in color which is effective is to watch the balance of your color on the page. Placing a certain color in 3 rules of third in a triangle keeps the eye flowing about the page. And you'll see me suggest this quite a bit too. You don't want to just have one spot where you have the color blue, for instance, on your page, because your eye is going to go right to that color. This is kind of a combination of the isolation technique and the color I say technique, but I mean design principle. If you have a color just isolated in one spot, your eye is going to go right there. Of course, if that's your purpose, for that to be your where you want the visual weight to go, then that's good. But often I see somebody will throw a cute element on a page, and it'll be the only thing with that color on the page, and the eye will go right there instead of the photos. And so if you add that same color and maybe a brad or something in 2 other places on the page, it balances that out and takes that visual weight away. Fourth visual weight design principle is shape. In this instance, you can see that I took the same layout that I had above with the one larger photo and the 2 smaller photos, and I put a shape of an arrow around the larger photo. And you can see that also helps to bring the eye right to the layout. Putting circles behind a photo, just grabbing a small border circle and putting it, or triangles or squares or anything behind the main photo, the focal point photo, will also help bring the eye to it. You have to note how things lead the eye. Placements of ribbons can lead the eye away from the photo, or if you place them right so they travel to the photo, that too would be considered the shape design principle. Now texture is another important one, but it's so important that I've actually covered it in the next tutorial. Texture isn't really considered tactile texture when we're talking about visual weight. It's more the use of patterned papers that will detract from the layout, and so other things like inking edges will draw attention, and that would be considered texture, or using the punch technique as I have in another tutorial. Those kinds of things are considered texture that will help draw the eye to the layout, and I don't have a sample here in this tutorial. The isolation design principle, it will certainly cause your eye to go straight to photos. You'll see us talk about white space layouts, and this would be one sample of it, but you'll often see layouts where the entire photo has a white space. Even if it's another color, it's still called white space, and the photo is just down in one corner, and your eye just wants to be pushed down to that corner and where the photo is, and that would be the isolation technique. Value. If an element that is in a kit that you have, and it is just the cutest little element you've ever seen, and you have to buy that kit because it has this adorable little element in it, then you put this element on your page, and it can actually have the adverse effect from what you want. Because it's so cute, it has a large value for visual weight, and the eye will just go right to that cute little element first rather than the photos. And so one way that you can use the design principles together to counter that is to make that really cute element smaller. So we go back to the size design principle to counterbalance the huge emphasis on the cute value. And so that's something else to pay attention to. Now balance is another huge factor in visual weight. And in elementary school you learned all about symmetrical artwork, and how what you had on one side was also on the other side of the layout. And if you have it, for instance, in layouts, if you have something really big on the left side, then you're going to need something just as big on the right side, or you could balance it horizontally between top and bottom. Another suggestion is the general rule of thirds, that you can divide your whole layout into thirds, and make sure that each of the thirds are equally balanced with elements. You can use 3 photos, 3 buttons, 3 elements work together. Anything in 3 always seems to work really well together. Another aspect that you can see in this sample, and I'll zoom back in, and this is a sample of the balance. In general, bottom-heavy layouts are better to the eye than top-heavy layouts. And this one on the left, you can see I have the largest photo, the rabbit, as the focal photo, and I have it at the top of the page. And I also have this dark purple. We say contrast brings visual weight, and so this dark purple also carries a lot of weight because there's so much of it. And so this is a top-heavy layout where both of these things that bring a lot of visual weight are at the top of the page. So if I simply move them to the bottom of the page, can you feel how when looking at this it seems so much more balanced and pleasing to the eye? You know, our teachers always said to put that title at the top of the page, and often titles which are larger carry a lot of visual weight, and so here this title at the top of the page also has visual weight. The cuteness of the way the T is done would be a value design principle, which is also carrying a lot of visual weight, and all of this is at the top of the page. And so don't be afraid to move your titles down on a page. It took me forever to get out of that high school art put your titles at the top of the page rut that I was stuck in, and to start moving my titles down on the pages. And that really helps. It's such a simple thing, but it really helps your layouts just to move the titles down on the page. And so when you're looking at balance and you may be looking at the top half and the bottom half of the layout, maybe make everything just a tad bit lower on the page to give a little bit of space at the top of the page when you're thinking about your placement of your elements. And get in the habit maybe of whatever you're deciding to make your focal point, bring it down on the page. Those big photos generally look better when they're down on the page rather than at the top. So I have in both the subscriber area, which would be a more private area, and out in the main forum, a thread for layout suggestions. And I invite you to share your layout there, and I will pick out these design principles in your layout and share them with you and give suggestions for changes. One of the best ways to be able to learn these design principles is to simply allow me to point them out to you, and for people to redo layouts after the suggestions to see the changes. And so the more people that get brave and start doing that, whether you want to do it in a more private area in the subscriber area or out in the main area, the more people that get brave and begin doing that and allow me to point out the visual weight design principles in those layouts, and the more everybody will learn. So I invite you to do that, and I hope you learned a lot with this tutorial. I know I use these principles a lot in my layouts, and since I'm not naturally artistic, having guides to help me has really changed the way I scrap.